Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Getting Your Study Schedule Back on Track, brought to you by the Academic Resource Center at Georgetown University. I'm Betsy Malarczyk, and I'm a Learning Skills Specialist with the ARC. Today, we're going to talk about how to get back into the academic mindset when your academics feel like they've been slipping away for quite some time. Why does it feel so difficult to get back on track once you've gotten behind? Somehow missing one assignment deadline turns into missing multiple assignment deadlines without you even noticing how it happened. The culprit for this is the burnout cycle. The burnout cycle begins when you overexert yourself to complete competing deadlines. The academic calendar can be cruel, and sometimes you find that you have two papers due the same day, so you push yourself to get everything done. Sometimes this means that you're giving up on sleep, which seems like a good idea at the time, but which ultimately leads to the next phase in the burnout cycle of ignoring assignments due to exhaustion. Because of how much work you've put into completing many assignments at once, you are then burnt out, which means that you do nothing as you let your body and mind recover. While you're recovering, the deadlines slowly begin to accumulate, which leads to ultimately being surprised by multiple competing deadlines. So it's a cycle of trying to do more than your body and mind can handle, and then collapsing as a result. With this in mind, your goal in getting back on track should not be to complete every assignment that you missed. Trying to do everything at once guarantees that you will get behind again. Instead, your goal in getting back on track should be to prioritize which assignments you need to focus on as you move forward. So how can you determine which assignments to prioritize? Begin by making a list of all of the assignments that you have due. This includes both assignments that are overdue, as well as assignments due in the next week. Maybe next 2 weeks if you know you have a major test or major paper coming up. The goal here is to write down everything so that you can get a sense of how many assignments are potentially on your radar. After you've written down all of your assignments, you need to isolate which assignments you will be prioritizing. Start by asking yourself which assignments are the most important for you to complete. Assignments that fall into this category are most frequently ones that are worth a large percentage of your course grade, or that align with either your personal goals or the goals of the course. If you're already behind, then not everything can be a priority. If you try to make every assignment and task a major priority, then you may not get caught up. As you look over your assignments, also consider which assignments you can let go. All assignments contribute to your learning in some way, but some may not be as helpful to you if the lesson they were related to has already passed. In figuring out which assignments are not priorities, ask yourself which assignments will contribute the least to your learning now that the deadline has passed. You should also take into consideration that sometimes the best course of action is to approach your professor to discuss a late assignment. I would recommend doing this if there is a major assignment that you are way behind on. This could be an assignment where the deadline passed, or it could be an assignment that has an upcoming deadline, but that you can tell you will not do too well on. Either way, the sooner you discuss an assignment with your instructor, the sooner that you can work together on developing a plan. Once you've decided which assignments are priorities, label each assignment on your list as priority, non-priority, or ask professor. Ideally, you should have 2 assignments labeled as priority for each class, one that is overdue and one that has an upcoming deadline. When you're trying to catch up in a class, it's important to not be so focused on completing deadlines that have passed that you ignore upcoming deadlines. If you don't have any late assignments, but you just feel behind, then consider it on a class by class basis of what is the next big priority. Having one priority per class will help you stay focused and keep you from getting overwhelmed. The later that certain assignments might be, the lower your motivation to complete them may be. So what can motivate you to push forward? The process of mental contrasting can help you visualize your goals in a productive way that gives you a glimpse into the future once you complete those goals. Mental contrasting is the process of comparing your goal to your current reality. This means that you assess the biggest obstacle standing in the way of working towards your goal, and you strategize how to manage that obstacle. Begin the process of mental contrasting by asking yourself about the most important goal you have right now, either academically or otherwise. Maybe you have a major test coming up in the next week, or maybe you have a paper due soon. Once you've identified the goal, try to visualize the positive outcome that will occur once you've completed that goal. Maybe you will have finished your last major test before finals, which will give you a sense of relaxation. Maybe if you complete a paper before the deadline, it means that you'll be able to enjoy your weekend by getting together with friends. Finally, ask yourself, what emotional reaction will occur if you achieve this goal? Perhaps you will feel less stressed. Perhaps you will feel a sense of accomplishment, or maybe you will feel less discouraged because you managed to complete a deadline. Focusing on the positive elements of completing this goal is an important step towards considering the obstacles that prevent us from getting work done. Once you've assessed your goal, you need to consider what is your biggest obstacle to getting back on track. More often than not, these obstacles are internal. They might include poor time management, lack of energy, not understanding material, being distracted by personal issues, or even procrastination due to perfectionism. Understanding the reason why you are unable to reach your goal is an important part of getting back on track, because if you don't address this obstacle, it will continue to serve as a distraction. And being realistic about why you don't accomplish tasks, you can begin to respond to the root cause, which will bring you closer to accomplishing your goals. After you've identified these obstacles, you can begin anticipating when and where they occur. You can often recognize patterns in either time of day or location that tend to send you on a distraction spiral. Do you become distracted by outside pressures when your family calls you? Or perhaps you find yourself trying to work in your bed, but it makes you tired? Having a sense of what triggers these obstacles can then allow you to consider how you can prevent them from occurring. A distracting phone call, for example, can be temporarily alleviated by turning your phone off. The temptation to nap in bed will not be as great if you plan on working in the library. In managing your obstacles, it's also important to ask yourself when and where there are opportunities to work towards your primary academic goal. Maybe you have friends in one of your classes. Can you plan on doing homework together? Perhaps you have a 30-minute break between classes. Can you use it to study for an upcoming test? Identifying the tools available to you is just as important as identifying the obstacles. One way to avoid these obstacles is to proactively plan out where and when you will work on these major assignments. Begin by assessing the times of day you're most and least productive. Sometimes we respond to falling behind by trying to work twice as hard for twice the amount of time. Instead of pushing yourself to work harder, think of how you can be mindful of working when you work best. Assess your last few weeks, asking yourself which times of day or which days of the week you got the most done, and aim to concentrate on harder tasks during those times. You can also avoid obstacles by preparing your environment before it's time to work. If you find yourself getting distracted by your phone, put it on silent and place it on the other side of the room. If you lose track of time talking to your roommate, then make a study playlist and listen to music while you work. In a similar vein, you should also prepare your break activities before it's time to work. If you are often distracted by watching Netflix, then don't take a break by watching Netflix. Instead, brainstorm a different break activity before you begin to work. These are all ways to anticipate and counter obstacles before it's time to work, which can help you stay on track once you're actually working. Another tool that can help you stay on track is an anchor. An anchor is a physical cue that ties you to your goals, reminding you to focus. An anchor can be a visual reminder to remind you of what you're hoping to accomplish, such as a Post-it note on your desk, a to-do app on your phone, or a task list on your phone background. The idea is to put these reminders someplace that you're likely to see them, so that when you're in that distraction mode, you will visually see your productivity reminder. This is one reason why I like to have productivity apps on my phone before the fun apps, because I go to my phone to take a break, I see the productivity app, and then I'm reminded, oh, you should be working. If you do ignore visual cues, then consider setting up tech reminders. Notifications on your phone or a text message from an accountability, such as a friend or family member, can be a good way to check in on your major tasks. Having an alarm go off when you want to be finishing a task can help you check in to see whether or not you've actually been working on that task. And again, just having a friend or family member, whether or not they are in the class or even go to Georgetown, but having someone with whom you can talk about your main goal for the week can be really helpful in making sure you're keeping that goal in mind. Sometimes it's just about reminding yourself of that goal and approaching it from a positive place that can help you stay on track. A good way to remind yourself of your deadlines is to schedule a regular check-in time to look over what you have due. The idea is that you have one space and time throughout the day when you're regularly looking over your goals. Ideally, you should do this when your mind is fresh. For some folks, this might be first thing in the morning. For others, it might actually be in the evening looking over the goals for the next day. But if you can do this when you're motivated and when you have energy to process those goals, then it will help you subconsciously develop a plan for throughout the day. Checking in with your deadlines can also be an easy way to start working. Sometimes we're putting off doing the work itself because it feels really big. We might have anxiety around it. We might just not want to do it. By checking in with your goals and developing a plan for how you're going to approach them, you are still going to be mentally preparing for that work and motivating yourself to do that work. However, it's easier to sit down and look over your goals than it is to do the work itself. When you are updating your goals in your to-do list, be sure as well that you're updating it based on what progress you've made or what progress you haven't made. Lists are more likely to change than they are to stay the same. So once you start planning, it's good to be in the habit of changing your plans. They're constantly evolving based on the ebbs and flow of energy levels. A good way to work this process into your day is through habit stacking. The idea behind habit stacking is that you add a new habit that you want to develop onto a habit that is already well established. Some well established habits you might already have in your practice include brushing your teeth, going to class, or eating a meal. So if you want to regularly check on your task list, perhaps you would try doing it after you brush your teeth or while you're eating dinner. The idea is to try to regularly do the same task after that habit that you regularly complete. If you want to study for biology ahead of time, try doing it for the 30 minutes after your biology class. You'll already be in the mindset and you have a habit of regularly going to biology. So by connecting those two things together, you're more likely to complete it. Make your goals small and realistic in the beginning. In developing habits, the key is to begin by accomplishing something you know you can do rather than trying to do too much. Maybe you want to study for an hour a day, but you can build up to that more realistically by beginning with a smaller block of time. Again, at the beginning of the session, I talked about how everything can't be a priority. Likewise, you can't pour all of your energy into one habit without letting the others kind of lose some of that energy. So I recommend in trying to get back on track to avoid all or nothing thinking. Sometimes we approach catching up on a class as I either need to do all of the work or I've done none of the work. And the truth is doing some of the work is still going to be significant progress. So we'll have time for questions. If anyone has a question, please feel free to add it to the chat. I also wanted to plug our next webinar, which will be on Tuesday, November 29th, which will be right after Thanksgiving break. It will be a final exam planning session. So we'll be working on actively developing study plans for finals. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to add them to the chat. Otherwise, have a great afternoon and thanks for coming.